This episode is sponsored by Ellii.
Ellii is one of the world's leading online content providers for English teachers.
If you're looking for relevant, ready-made materials to get your students talking, head over to ellii.com today.
That's ELLII.com.
The Teacher Think-Aloud podcast is also proud to partner with the following podcasts.
Tune in to Travel with Purpose, a podcast that shares meaningful ways travelers can engage in communities. Learn about the work of global nonprofits and the realities of the communities they serve. Build relationships with the locals through contributing to their community projects. Make an impact on lives, both theirs and yours. Travel with Purpose this year.
Hello, listeners. Do you like storytelling and folk tales? Do you like learning how connected the world is? Or do you just need a calm voice reading you to sleep after a busy day? Well, that's what I'm here for. My name's Dustin, and I host Sandman Stories Presents. I take public domain folk tales, add some sounds of nature, and read them to you. I am a teacher of almost 20 years, and I found my love of storytelling in my classes. Several years ago, my school got me into recording stories for public consumption. I turned that into Sandman Stories, and have continued it since. So, if you like stories, storytelling, folk beliefs, cultural connections, or quiet reflections, come take a listen to stories that I'm privileged to read to you. Thank you, and good night.
Hello, and welcome to the Teacher Think Aloud podcast, a podcast for reflective practice for teachers of English around the world. I'm your co-host, Anna.
And I'm Shay.
Summer's here, Shay, and that means it's time for us to release our summer reading list again. This is our second year doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We loved it so much last year, we decided to do it again.
Yes, and of course, we hope that our picks inspire you listeners to join us in our bibliophile pursuits. But the truth is, we do this episode out of selfish desire to, we both read so much, and we almost never have time to share our favorite reads with each other. So this is a chance to do that.
Both valid reasons. Yeah. I love hearing about what you're reading, Shay.
Yes, same. I think you're the only person I follow on Storygraph, which now that I'm saying it out loud, it's kind of sad. I should probably get more friends.
I know. Follow us on Storygraph, listeners.
Yes.
We'll link our accounts in the show notes.
Anna actually rates most books that she reads. I am far less reliable in that department.
I've gotten worse over time, but yeah.
Well, anywho, our last summer reading list, episode 70, we gave you 13 books, and none of them, not a one, were beachy reads. And this year,
no.
We've learned nothing.
Nope. Another hefty year for us. We're going to try to keep it a little shorter, maybe not 13 this time, but it's the topics are quite heavy.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, last year we primarily did fiction, and this year I think we're leaning a bit heavier on nonfiction, memoir, and sort of larger idea books. And I've been thinking about what this means for us, Anna.
That we're in a dark place.
That we're just absolutely desperate to understand what's going on in the world. I feel like it's a pretty common point for us to return to. The world feels heavy. People are being mistreated by systems and are mistreating one another. So we're on a journey to understand our surroundings and ourselves this year. So if you're listening to this, we hope that you'll find something here with us.
Right. So like last year's episode, we'll go back and forth a bit, chat about what drew us to these works, and share some ideas about how you might address some of these ideas with your colleagues and your students.
And to help us organize our thoughts a bit, Anna, because we can go a little wild when we have no parameters.
Let's
kidding. Challenge ourselves today, okay, to share about how these books have changed how we see the world, how we see teaching, how we see ourselves.
I think I can manage that.
Okay, well, lucky you, because you get to go first.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the first book I've got for you today is the popular memoir Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. It seems like everyone's been reading this in the past few years. I just happened to pick it up this year, but I know it's been out for a while now.
Hmm. It's
I'd
on
say
my list.
yeah. I mean, it definitely was on my list for a long time, and it is a
Yeah.
pretty typical choice for me.
Mm.
I like books by authors representing cultures around the world that I may
Hmm.
not be so familiar with. And I also love books that represent the American immigrant experience.
Hmm.
And so this book falls squarely in the immigrant experience category.
Hmm.
And so, from an English language teacher's perspective, there is a lot to dig into there,
Yeah.
right? So, themes of feeling disconnected from your heritage, right? The author, Michelle, is half Korean and half white. And
Hmm.
okay, this is a teeny tiny spoiler, but also not really because it is just sort of the premise of the book. But
I'll allow
basically,
it. Hmm.
Michelle's mother, who is Korean, passes away. And the book is about Michelle's journey grappling with one, the challenges of seeing your parent wither away slowly,
Mm.
two, her very complicated relationship with her mother, right? It's not just a happy, rosy relationship.
Mm.
And three, the grief of it all and how that grief is intertwined with her identity because losing her
Hmm.
mother, right, is like losing her only connection to her Korean heritage, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I guess when I first started reading it, I thought it was a little simplistic, and
Hmm.
it was Michelle Zauner's first and only book. She's more of a singer-songwriter.
Okay.
But the more I read it, the more I really identified with her experience of grief. And this is getting like super personal.
Hmm.
But, I lost my mother to cancer almost 10 years ago now. And
Hmm.
the long, excruciating fight to survive and the whole process of death just
Hmm.
reading about it just really tapped a nerve. I had
Hmm.
a very different relationship with my mother than Zauner did, but I really liked kind of comparing notes in a way and seeing grief from different perspectives.
Mm. I can
Yeah.
imagine it must have felt cathartic for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the word. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Well,
What about you?
thank you for sharing a little bit of your heart there with us. Well, Anna, the one, you've mentioned a memoir that's about grief and losing connection to a heritage culture through the loss of a person. And
Uh-huh.
I'm going to share a memoir. It's also a memoir about cultural inheritance, but from a completely different angle. So
Hmm.
instead of losing a connection, it's more about having so many connections, maybe too many connections, although I would question, that modifier, and not a single one of them like fitting neatly. So sort of the
Okay.
multifaceted nature of identity.
Hmm.
So my choice here is My Broken Language by Quiara, Alegría, Hudes, and I have a copy. I've got
Oh,
just two of the books that I'm recommending today.
love when you speak
Really
Spanish.
really incredible cover. I mean, we've got like this collage happening, and I think it's just a
Yeah.
really perfect depiction of sort of that multifaceted identity.
Hmm.
So I read this book a few years ago, and it's really just stayed with me. So Udes grew up in Philadelphia. She had a Puerto Rican mother and a Jewish
Oh,
father, and so
interesting.
she moved between, Spanish, English, Spanglish,
Mm.
prayer circles. Her grandmother was very devout, and she also dwelled a lot in these academic spaces and then eventually Ivy League theater. And
Mm.
so, the title of the book, My Broken Language, it's not a deficiency, right? I think as it's
Mm.
often
Hmm.
portrayed, but it's this, hybrid code switching tongue that she had to build because not one of her languages could hold her full experience.
I get that. Mm.
This was really powerful for me. I think for anyone working in language education, the premise really probably hits you right in the chest. How often are we encountering students whose real communicative lives don't fit neatly into sort of the linguistic landscape that we're
Hmm.
presenting them with and asking them to sort of assimilate into? And so Udes is basically telling us that the mixing, the switching, the improvising, the stuff that we're told like we should probably correct is actually where the deepest meaning making happens. So
Yeah.
just, oh man, I'm I'm feeling emotional just thinking about it. I think it was 4 years ago that I read this, but It's really artfully written. She's a playwright and she won the Pulitzer. And I think you can feel that power as you're reading.
Mm.
But I think one of my favorite pieces was just moving between English and Spanish as I read.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
the memoir itself really kind of floats between genres and registers and voices, and I think it really reflects how language is done in the world. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, that's so cool. It really kind of reminds me also, I don't know if you remember, but way back when you and I were teaching different sections of the same college writing course for international
Mhm.
students at Fordham
Mhm.
University, right? This reminds me of that. There was one text, I think, in like the narrative writing section of that
Yep.
course. It was a short story about an immigrant's experience learning English,
Yeah.
and it was like taking sort of possession of the language.
Yeah.
I remember it was a really great way to open up the discussion about our own students' experiences with
Yep.
multilingual identities. And I feel like this book, you said obviously it's very clearly in that sort of English language teacher niche, but this would be
Mhm.
a great starting point, maybe an excerpt from it for a discussion with students
Absolutely.
about their own linguistic identities. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think I think just for reference, what you're referring to might have been Amy Tan's mother tongue or something
You
like
know,
that. I think that's the
what,
name of it.
give me a
Yeah.
second. I
I
think
still teach that. I love that. I think that's what we were referring to.
Oh, that's a good one. I think that that's really good. It's also, I actually looked it up
You
in the
did.
textbook.
Oh,
It's
good.
here.
Oh, I was just looking. Do I have guidelines? I have
I
guidelines. I
have
can't reach it.
guidelines
Okay, yeah.
right here. It's My English by Julia Alvarez.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't speak
yeah.
Spanish, but that was kind of the starting point. But you're right that there were quite a few that were about language and
Yeah.
identity. So this
Yeah.
is another great book to kind of add to that repertoire that
That's a
you
great
and I,
resource.
yeah, excellent. Well,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
okay. So
What else?
what else? The next one I picked here is not a book I read in the past year. You said you read that last one about 4 years ago. This
Yeah.
one was 6 years ago, I think. And I'm bringing this one out of the archives of some of the works of nonfiction that have really shaped my understanding of the world.
Mm.
It's How to Hide an Empire by Daniel Immerwahr. It makes me want to say it in German, Immerwahr. I don't know,
Oh,
whatever.
cool. Oh.
This is one of the few books that I actually bought. I know you
Nice.
buy your books, but I usually get my books from the library. So
Yep.
here's the cover. Okay,
Mm.
and it kind of gives you a sense of what it's about. I read this in April of 2020 while in
Okay.
lockdown,
Uh-huh.
after I had just gotten back from my curtailed English language fellowship in Armenia.
Hmm.
And at the time, I was really reading a lot to understand my own positionality as an American abroad.
Hmm.
And so this book is a history of the United States that argues that the US has long functioned as an empire outside of, right, the logo map, the 50 states,
Yep.
but not in the traditional like 19th century sense of imperialism. Right.
Mm-mm.
So it starts with the displacement and genocide of the native peoples of North America, the expansion west, and through to more of the modern form of imperialism that involves cultural and military influence. Right. So this
Mm.
interpretation of US history was really fascinating to read. And I came away with a better overall sense of American empire.
I bet.
But also, it also gave me a lot of really interesting, discrete examples of American imperialism, right? So, like, for example, I'd never really thought of the fact that we have military bases around the world.
Mm.
What other country really does that in the same way that we do here in the US, right? But
Hmm.
that's a form of imperialism in and of itself, and how that sort of helped export culture
Yep.
and have like this military presence all
Yeah,
over the
yeah.
place,
Assert
right?
dominance, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally, right? Or I mean, obviously I'd heard of it but not read so much about it, but the way
Yeah.
that we've exploited territories, right? Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, the US Virgin Islands, like all of the medical experiments in Puerto Rico, right? They were testing out birth control on Puerto Ricans because of
Mm.
just, you would never do that on mainland USA, but
Oh
let's do that in a territory. We don't care about those people, right? So it's
my
just
gosh.
It's pretty cringy.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Right?
getting angry. Yeah, it makes my blood
Yeah.
boil.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hadn't really known so much about our relationship with the Philippines as a
Yeah.
US colony either,
Hmm.
and like the brutality of the Philippine-American War. And then just, okay, very weird random fact, but all of the random islands in the middle of the
Mm.
Pacific that the US has acquired just to like either have a stopping point to fly other places easily
Yeah.
or to make fertilizer out of guano, which is bird poop, which is, but like a huge, just sort of machine of creating this fertilizer, right? So it's been 6 years since I read it, and I don't
Yeah.
remember all of the
Oh,
details, but I mean, it truly shifted the way I think about US history. And I think thinking about the moment we're living in right now, it's really important to remember that what we're doing right now, all of the ways that the US kind of brutalizes the world, that's not new, right?
uh-huh.
So enough said.
Hmm.
I don't want to go too far into that, but
Yeah.
that's why I picked
Yeah.
this book. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a really powerful, albeit frustrating read.
Hmm.
But I'm sure that you get a lot that you can use to empower students. And if that book doesn't make you want to be an advocate, the next one that I'm sharing will.
Nice
Um,
transition.
so thank you. So, you just talked about the empire that you don't see on the map, right?
Hmm.
The book I'm going to share next is really what the nation, that is the US, demands in return for letting someone in.
Okay.
So this book it's Conditional Citizens by Laila Lalami. Laila Lalami is Moroccan-born, naturalized American or US citizen, and she uses her own story alongside history, law, and cultural criticism to make this argument that for a lot of people living in the US, belonging isn't a status, it's about performance.
Mm.
And it's a performance that's constantly being reviewed based on your race, your religion, your gender, your name, where you were born. So
Hmm.
everything, most things that you can't control about yourself, you're constantly being judged for in this country. So she moves through immigration, surveillance, assimilation, and the stories that the country tells itself about who really counts as really American.
Yeah.
So again, that theme of identity is really prominent in this book as well. But
Mm.
what I appreciate about Lalami is that she doesn't write as an outsider looking in. Like she holds the passport,
Mm.
she speaks the
Hmm.
language, she has the credentials, and yet she still gets treated like she's a guest who has overstayed her welcome. And so
Hmm.
there's this tension between legal inclusion and social conditionality. And
Oh
that's the
yeah.
whole book.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And for me, it was uncomfortable to read in
Yeah.
the best way. Like, Anna, you and I have
Hmm.
talked a lot about, especially on this podcast, about how we need to constantly check our privilege as,
Yeah.
white middle
White
class women,
cisgender females.
cisgender.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just thinking about that privilege from, the
Hmm.
US born stance.
Hmm.
And then I think for language educators, of course, this one is really close to heart. So much
Hmm.
of what we do is tied to this implicit promise that, acquiring the language is going to open the doors to full participation in the classroom, in society. But really, Lalami shows that fluency and credentials and cultural literacy doesn't neutralize the conditions that are
Yep.
placed on certain bodies and accents and names.
Hmm.
And that ultimately, no matter what we do, at least up until this point, we're still looking at a social hierarchy that places white male landowners at the top, right? It sounds
Hmm.
so antiquated, but like we're
Right.
still there.
Yep.
So I think that
Yeah.
it's just a really
Frustrating.
useful challenge for
Hmm.
anyone who's, working in academia or designing curricula around integration, around what it means to be successful in, the world of
Hmm.
education, and really think about, what are we trying to integrate people into and on
Hmm.
whose terms.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
there's a lot there, but really it makes me think about, phenotype, accent, and passport bias that
Yep.
exists within ELT.
Hmm.
And we've done a couple of episodes related to this. So Mary Marutian and Lillian
Mm-hmm.
Ardell have both talked about these different biases related to
Mm-hmm.
cultural and linguistic background. So for anyone who's listening who wants to dig deeper into these themes, I think this book will equip you to advocate for your students.
Yeah, we're always looking for more tools to advocate for students and
Yeah.
more tools to really interrogate ourselves. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the two episodes we've done with Mary Marutian and Lillian Ardell. And
Mhm.
I'm going to bring it up again, but on last year's book list, we had Airplane Mode, which is also has
Yes.
a lot about passportism,
Yep.
accentism, etc. So
Mhm.
it's really it's a theme you and I keep coming back to.
Good.
So
I'm glad. We should.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so okay. I'm kind of taking another turn here.
Mm.
Remember, I mentioned earlier that I prefer to read two types of books pretty much, immigrant stories and stories about a culture or a society in another part of the world.
Yep.
So this
Me
next
too.
book is yeah, well, I know that about you.
Same.
So this next book is kind of both of those things,
Okay.
but it brings in a little fantasy, a little
Ooh.
magical element to it, right? So
Yeah,
I'm
nice. Okay.
talking about Exit West by
Okay.
Mohsin Hamid, which starts off in an unnamed, completely unnamed, we don't know where it is, war-torn country somewhere in West Asia or
Okay.
the Middle East, as you might call it, or whatever you call it, right? The name is kind of contentious.
Yep.
But anyways, this country is depicted as culturally Arab.
Okay.
And that's the point. It's not supposed to be specific, but it's the story of two characters that fall in love.
Mm.
But as war breaks in the country, it turns out that there are these magical doors that let people walk through them from one country to another.
I would
So
love that.
basically it's a
Yeah.
portal, right? It's a portal, a magic portal
Oh,
or
cool.
teleportation device. There's no explanation about how these doors work. Like the people walking through them also don't know what's going on, but they're there, these doors. So
Okay.
what's interesting is it creates this massive wave of refugee migration, uncontrolled migration around the world. There's the relationship between the two characters, but the book is really focused on the refugee experience, the geopolitics around it,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
how different cities, different places around the world reacted to this massive influx of refugees.
Okay.
So, sprinkled throughout this main story, also something I loved about the book was that there are these little vignettes of other
Mm.
people and their experiences. So, it's not just the main story. You're kind of getting like a 360 view. And one of my favorites was the little sweet story of two old men from different countries, and one of them finds a door that goes into the other's backyard.
Mm.
And even though they don't speak the same language, they form this beautiful little bond. But I digress. The whole book
Mm.
is just a delightful read and a wonderful topic for English language teachers. I think it would be a great book to discuss with a class to analyze what kind of effect migration has on the world and on the migrants themselves, right? Because
Mm.
the migrant experience, the way that the world is experiencing, but also the very personal journey that it is for so many people.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I'm gonna put that towards the top of my to read list,
it's
Anna. That
good.
sounds amazing.
It's fun.
And it sounds like it's a really important read for anyone in this moment, in any moment, but in this
Hmm.
moment, and
Hmm.
especially for people who are living in countries that typically receive refugee
Yes.
individuals. Like we
Hmm.
often hear the argument, like, why not just stay where you are? Or there's just a
Hmm.
lot of concern about the draining of our resources that happens when refugees come to
Hmm.
a country. And I just think it could do a world of good to cultivate empathy in this area.
Yeah.
You really don't know what something like forced migration or displacement could make you do unless you've actually lived it. So, reading is a great portal in and of itself, right?
Yeah, it is. And I'm just chopping up on my tea because I'm really
Okay.
ready to hear about your next book or
Yeah.
pair of
Okay.
books.
Yeah, so we're
Okay.
gonna pair of books. We're gonna kind of hard
Okay.
swivel again. So we've gone from personal grief to hidden empires to conditional belonging to magical doors. And what's running beneath all of it, I think, is this question of what happens when the story that you've been told about a country, about a culture, about yourself turns out to be wrong.
Uh-huh.
or at least incomplete. So I
Yeah.
have two nonfiction books that sit with that question, and they're both very different. They're different in style, but I think
Mm.
they're asking the same thing from sort of two different directions. So the first is Being Wrong: Adventures in the Margin of Error by Kathryn
Ooh,
Schulz.
you
And
mentioned this
this
before. Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure I have several
Mm-hmm.
times. So this book really like made me realize just how allergic most people are to being wrong and
Yeah.
just how much that allergy can cost us. So Schulz is a journalist and she traces the history and the psychology of error, not just factual mistakes, but like the deep-seated attachment that we have to being right and
Mm.
our conviction that certainty equals competence. I think a lot of us carry that. So
Yeah, I
she
feel
makes
that.
this,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so she makes this argument that the experience of being wrong actually feels exactly like the experience of being right. And she uses Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner as an analogy. So
Okay.
Wiley's chasing the Roadrunner. Roadrunner goes off a cliff. Wiley follows the Roadrunner off the cliff, but doesn't realize that he's gone off a cliff until he like pauses for a moment, looks down, and then realizes like it's too late. He's run off a cliff.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
idea here is that you don't know that you're wrong until after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this has, of course, huge implications for how we teach, how we give feedback, how we respond when a student or a colleague challenges our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I kept underlining things as I was reading and I immediately felt called out. And now this was
Yeah,
probably, I
I
mean,
would
this
feel
was
the same.
probably 12 years ago that this came out.
Wow.
So she
Yeah.
actually had a TED Talk on the idea. And as
Okay.
I was watching the TED Talk, I was like, I love this. I paused it the second she mentioned her book and I ordered it. I was just rapt watching it and I was like, this is going to resonate. So I have asked a lot of people in my life to read this, and some people have been offended. They're like, "What do
So
you mean, Shay?
it
Like,
can be
read this
passive
book."
aggressive.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, right.
You
But
asked me
other
to read
people
it.
play along, and they're like, "Oh, yes, actually, there's like great value in thinking
Uh-huh.
about this, right?"
Yeah.
So
There is. Yeah.
it's important for the times, I think. But then I have sort of a companion piece, and I call it that, but they're not actually related at all. And this one is How to Be Enough by Hendriksen.
Mm.
So Schulz is asking us, why are we so afraid of being wrong? And Hendriksen is asking, why are we so afraid of not being enough, right?
Oh, yeah.
So she is a clinical psychologist and she writes about the inner critic, perfectionism, the gap between who we think we should be and who we actually are.
Mm.
And I think this would resonate with you.
Yeah.
It's practical, it's compassionate, and it
Mm.
it doesn't do that thing where I think most self-help books just tell you like think positive and you'll be fine.
I can't stand
Actually,
that. Yeah.
she's like, take the self-critic seriously. It's a voice that you've developed for a reason.
Mm.
And she helps you sort of learn how to talk back to that inner critic. So it's been really helpful in, I've been on this journey of battling perfectionism.
Yeah. It's
And
ongoing.
yeah,
Hmm.
and perfectionism, I think, does serve a purpose in our lives. And
Hmm.
it's definitely made me into the professional that I am today.
Yeah,
But I think
same.
that I could have gotten here, maybe you agree, probably could have gotten here a little less painfully, right? Like
Probably.
I needed
Yeah.
this book 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but I'm
Hmm.
really happy to have stumbled upon it now. And I just can't stop reflecting on these ideas. I'm working on an essay actually related to one of my takeaways.
Yeah.
Um,
It's great that you're
so
writing about these things. Yeah.
yeah, well, ever the reflective practitioner, right?
Hmm.
So, I bring these up sort of as a two for one, right? Because
Hmm.
I think reading these two together is really just we're talking about the same fear, right? There's the fear of
Yeah.
being wrong and the fear of not being enough. And they're basically the same thing, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah, they show up at different times, right? But
Hmm.
both of them keep us performing instead of connecting, all in the name of staying safe. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
vulnerability is scary. I get
Hmm.
it. I think this pairing is just a gift for teachers. Being wrong made me think about, not only error correction, but just how I perceive the people in front of me in my classroom. It
Hmm.
also made me think about how I receive feedback about my own work. And
Yeah.
then How to be enough is really, I wish someone had handed it to me in my first year of teaching. I always thought that
Yeah,
other
that would have been
people
helpful.
had it figured out. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if you're mentoring new teachers or you're leading PD or you're just trying to survive the semester, I think that this book and the other are definitely worth your time. So kind
Yeah,
of personal, but yeah.
I think you're totally right that these books are complementary. I'm glad you brought them up together because like, the fear of being wrong really kind of comes from our fear of not being enough, right? From our
Yeah.
fear of losing our self-worth
Yeah.
by being wrong, right? Being right means being enough. So, yeah, the rightness is the only way we can feel like we're enough, but like it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be that way,
No, no.
right?
And
And we
it's
can work
silly.
through both of these challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. You've really been
Yeah.
on a deep personal journey because you've been
Yes.
telling me, I think you told me about how to be enough. You were reading that in the past year, and how to be wrong
Yeah.
was something you read a long time ago. And I love that
Yeah.
they're in conversation with
Yeah.
each other. We've been in some heavy territory here.
I'd say.
Empire, grief, conditional belonging, war, like
What
working
else
on
is new though?
ourselves, right? So I think I just want to maybe guide us towards the light here. I want to give us something that sounded very weird saying guide us towards the light. But anyway,
I'm not
I want
going.
to get I want to give us something that's still doing serious work, but
Yeah.
also just genuinely fun
Yes.
to read.
Yes. Let's do
And
that.
so some listeners might have seen this on one of our newsletters recently, but my next book is Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that it's the pinnacle of fine literature by any means.
Okay.
But it's cute. I mean, I think it really helps us understand humanity at a deeper level, even though the story is all about robots.
Okay.
Stay with
That's
me
fun.
here.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
here.
in a nutshell, we're living in a future not too far from now where
Okay.
sentient robots are a normal part of our lives, right? It's like 20 to 40 years ahead, I can't remember. And the whole thing is narrated from the perspective of the robots.
Okay.
So it takes place at the end of a war where California has seceded from the United States. Conceivable.
Uh-huh.
And the
Uh-huh.
story is of this group of robots who essentially have been living in indentured servitude, working for a restaurant, and they get abandoned by their owners.
Oh.
Right? The restaurant goes bust, and they're just like stuck in this restaurant. So they decide to open their own restaurant. Isn't that cute?
A robot
It
restaurant.
sounds it
Is
sounds
it called
really
that?
silly.
Yeah.
It's called Automatic Noodle. Well, that
Oh,
gives away
oh,
a little,
okay.
but
Oh, thanks.
but
Oh
it
no.
sounds really silly, but
Yeah.
and it is silly to some extent, but
Yeah.
it actually touches on some really interesting themes, I would say, right? There's a whole discussion about gender with one of the robots that has been designed to mimic like typically feminine features, right?
Okay.
Robots have no gender, but like
Okay.
they have like shaped this robot to look a certain way, and there's a whole
Okay.
rebellion against the gender norms there.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a robot who's a war veteran and is working through its trauma. There's even a little weird love story. And of course, this whole story pivots around this core question of whether robots should have rights,
Yeah.
like the right to own their own restaurant.
Wild.
So it's cute. It's a really cute story. It can be a little heavy-handed in like communicating these kind of social justice ideas at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's very short. It could be a great short read with English language learners.
Okay.
There's so much to debate about, and in a way that isn't too personal, right? Because sometimes it's hard when it's
Yeah.
hits too close to home, and because it's robots,
Yep.
not some specific cultural or ethnic group that is experiencing persecution, like it kind of opens up the floor to
Yeah.
more open discussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that you're right that removing sort of the human element would allow for rich
Mm-hmm.
discussion and for all students to participate. It
Mm-hmm.
just sounds like a really fun read. Automatic Noodle. All right.
Really fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Well, so Automatic Noodle gives us these beings who were never meant to have autonomy, right? Fighting for the right to claim it. And I want to stay in that space because it's a fun place to be in our
Yeah.
minds. But I want to flip the question because my last pick really gives us a being who already has everything. That's infinite
Mhm.
knowledge, immortality, total competence. And this being discovers that none of it actually makes you a person. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, so
What is this?
it's called The Humans by Matt Haig, and it's
Oh, good.
told from the perspective of an alien who's sent to Earth to inhabit the body of a Cambridge mathematics professor.
Also ridiculous. Yay.
Yeah. And so he arrives and he's just completely disgusted by humans. Like the way we look, what our bodies do, what we
Oh,
eat,
gross.
our capacity. I mean, I'm disgusted when I sit and I think about it, right? But like, other things like our capacity for violence. And he's really baffled by things like love and family and why anyone would voluntarily eat peanut butter. He's like really
Oh,
put off by peanut butter.
that's
Which
this
is
is
just, it's
great.
just cute. Like, it's
Yeah.
just fun. So, his mission is to suppress a mathematical discovery that his species thinks is too dangerous for a species so messy like us, right? As us humans. So,
Ugh. Yeah.
yeah. Yes, it's true. Like we shouldn't have all the powers we have, really. But over time, right, through wine and poetry and rock music and yes, even peanut butter, he starts to see that something worth protecting is human imperfection. So
I
it's
love that.
yeah,
Yay.
yeah. And so I keep bringing up this theme of identity. And again, this book, though a much lighter and, fun sort of philosophical read, identity is still at the center of it. The alien is learning about humanness, not by mastering rules or by acquiring knowledge, because he already has all of that. He becomes human through vulnerability, through confusion, embarrassment, connection, sort of
Relatable. Yeah.
everything that makes us human, right? So I think that it's really powerful to think about how our surroundings, the people, the environment really shape us, right? They are formative. So
It's
for
beautiful.
yeah, well, so for us as language teachers, I think that this works on two levels. So first, the alien is basically the ultimate language learner, right? He's been dropped into this world where he knows the words, but he doesn't understand pragmatics, social
Mm-hmm.
rituals, unspoken rules like that make communication actually work. And I think, teachers can really connect to that because we've all had students who are like, I know all of this grammar, but I don't know how to use it, right? Here we
Yeah.
come back to communicative language teaching and its power.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also a deeper connection to this idea of imperfection and vulnerability and how those things aren't obstacles to belonging, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
alien doesn't connect to the humans around him by getting things perfectly right. He gets them wonderfully wrong, and it's just a lot of fun. And that's how I want my students to think of, moving through the world. If I can offer them anything, it's that imperfection is cool. It's good.
I love a wonderfully wrong. I'm going to use that. That's really great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my mouth is dry. We've talked
We've
about a
been
lot of
going.
books, Anna.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to read the
Humans,
humans,
plural there.
plural,
Yes,
right?
many of
Because
us, yeah.
yeah, I read The Midnight Library as
Ah,
well,
I love him.
by
Yeah.
Matt Haig, and it's a really great book. So I'm gonna go read that. That's
Go
great.
read
I'm gonna
that.
suggest that for a book club or something. I'm always
Good.
looking
You
for more
should. I
reads.
think I think
Yeah,
your book clubs would really like it. Yeah.
yeah,
All seven of your
yeah.
book clubs.
Yes. It's only
Running
two.
running joke, just two.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, okay. So if I may start wrapping us up here.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's what strikes me about this year's list.
Yeah.
So last year we gave you stories that cross borders, and they were almost all fiction, a little
Mhm.
bit of memoir. And this year we leaned into more balance,
Yeah.
kinda, with memoir, fiction, and
Yeah.
nonfiction. And I think that says something. We're not just asking what's happening out there in the world
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
This year, we're asking what's happening in the way we think, in the way we talk to ourselves, the way we decide who belongs and who doesn't belong.
Yeah. And one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation and from our list is, man, it's just hard being human, right? Like
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
everyone, every single one of these books on this list reminds us of that fact in a different way. We're shaped by so much, the empires that we inherit, the grief that we carry, the inner critics that we can't shut up, the languages that we're told are broken, and if that's true for us, right, as individuals, it's true for every single student who comes into our classroom, for every colleague that we work alongside.
Yeah, which is really a reminder about compassion, right? We can't possibly know what someone is carrying,
Right.
but we can read widely enough to stay humble about it.
Yes. So, if you're thinking about bringing any of these titles into your classroom or your professional development groups, we'd love to hear how. Some of these could work as book club selections, as Anna mentioned, for teachers or even for advanced learners. Conditional Citizens or How to Hide an Empire could be for conversations around belonging, citizenship, and representation.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to bring memoir and literary texts into language classrooms, I
Yeah.
would say, right?
Yeah.
Excerpts. It doesn't have to be the whole book, right? But
Right.
excerpts can be springboards for so much, right? For
Yeah.
cultural inquiry, but vocabulary development, writing prompts.
Yep.
I mean, I just think of all of the kinds of questions I would ask students
Yeah.
whenever I'm reading these, right?
Yeah.
You could use Crying in H Mart or My Broken Language for personal narrative and sensory writing,
Yep.
explore identity and self-perception through the humans, open up
Yeah.
conversations about being wrong with your students and talk about how we can be more empathetic towards people we disagree with,
Yes.
or use How to Be Enough to open up honest conversations about perfectionism and self-doubt, right,
Yep.
with your students or your teaching team.
Yeah. I feel like more people feel that than don't, right? So,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, like even if you're not teaching these full texts, these books can really anchor thematic units. So you could think about food and memory, the politics of belonging, what good enough really means depending on, the society or the subculture that you're functioning in, how error and uncertainty are actually where learning lives. There's a lot
So,
here.
yeah. So, of course, we have to end on the usual note, which is here are a few reflective questions to take with you as you read this summer or to
Yes.
share with your learners, your team, or your book club. So, one, which cultural assumptions did this book challenge for you?
Yep.
How does the author use language to convey a sense of place or history or identity? In what ways do the characters reflect or resist societal expectations? What insights does this book offer about resilience, power, or belonging? How might your students connect or struggle to connect with this text? And how would you scaffold that?
Yeah. And one we keep coming back to, what question did your last great read leave you with?
That might be my favorite question on the list.
Yeah, it's a good, big, meaty, reflective question, right?
Mhm.
Listeners, we
Yeah.
floated the idea of a book club last year, and we're still curious, should we make it happen? I'm winking at Anna.
Yeah.
A reading
Yeah.
community for cross-cultural understanding? Send a message and let us know.
Yes, please do send us a message.
Yes. Nothing guaranteed. Don't worry. Don't worry, Anna. I know.
Yeah, I know it's a lot more work, but I love it. Yes.
So, anyway, wherever you are right now, we hope that these stories find you well.
And we hope that they leave you changed just a little because the best stories do, right?
Yes. If you found this episode helpful or inspiring, please share it with a friend or colleague and not or, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, do all of the above. And also, if you're feeling generous, you can even support the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/thinkaloudpod.
I love coffee. Thanks so much for joining us on the Teacher Think Aloud podcast. Until next time, friends, happy teaching.
And happy reflecting. Enjoy your summer.
Bye.